Everybody, we are going live. Welcome to the Force the Vote Town Hall number 2. Really excited to have everybody here, and I'm going to pass it off to my co-host, Alex Coronado. Maybe Alex is not ready. Okay, here he is. There we go.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We had to make this happen and basically make everyone know about this very quickly with so many amazing speakers and so many amazing people getting involved so quickly. So thank you for being a part of this and for being available in this new year. I just want to say thank you for everyone that's gotten involved thus far with us in our Slack workspace, in the Facebook group, on the Twitter pages. Everything that we've done has been an inclusive volunteer movement, and everything that you see today, everything that you've been a part of, I can't thank you enough for being a part of it and acting through a lot of uncertainty while so much debate and so much discussion goes on. I really, I say this every day to everyone that we're working with, but and to everybody that joins our regional calls and national calls, thank you so much for acting and having the courage to act in the face of uncertainty. We all know, I think I can speak for everyone when I say that we all want Medicare for all. We all understand the necessity for it, and we all see the stark dichotomy of what of a better world kind of that we could and should fight for. And we're all here acting in the face of a lot of fears and a lot of, amongst all of the different dispersions that come against us. So thank you so much for acting. That's the thing that really rings true the most for me, day in, day out, seeing people, unfortunately I can't be physically with anyone, but to see their little thumbnail videos has made my days in the past, 7 or 8 days we've been doing this. So once again, just thank you. I can't stress that enough. And if David wants to, and once again, while we're on here, I just want to say real quick, if everybody wants to invite a friend to the YouTube live stream, get everybody in on this. We're about to have some amazing speakers speak about Force the Vote. So David, if you want to take it away, introduce our first speaker.
Yeah, really excited to have the chance to introduce the speaker. Those of you who have been following his career in the past few years, he's been a really huge, strong voice for progressivism and for socialism, and just so thankful to have him lend his voice to this movement, which has been so needed. And it just shows we really are all in this together, and there's so many amazing people fighting for healthcare who are not taking any excuses anymore, because too many people are struggling and the time to fight is now. So we thankfully had Lee Carter of Virginia, who gave us a video. Lee Carter was not able to make it live, but this video will speak for itself. It is some fire stuff, y'all. Just some background, Lee Carter is an elected member of the Virginia House of Delegates and a candidate for Virginia governor in 2021, just announced a couple days ago. Really stoked, and definitely keep an eye out for his election. From Lee's time in the Marine Corps to his time in office, Lee's been a powerful champion for working people, and his words today offer a very clear message of how forcing the vote is a strong tactic on the road to Medicare for All. And with that, we will play this video.
Hi, I'm Lee Carter. I'm a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, and I'm currently running for governor of Virginia. I'm here today to tell you about forcing the vote. Now, a lot of politicians and pundits like to think that forcing the vote is something beyond the pale, that it's a tactic that they've never seen before, they've never heard of. But I'm here today to tell you that that is simply untrue. It is a tried and true tactic in legislatures that has delivered results time and time again. You see, in my 4 years in the Virginia House of Delegates, I've served 2 years in the minority and 2 years in the majority. And during those 2 years when I was in the minority, we were controlled by Republicans, and Virginia Democrats forced the vote over and over and over again on a wide array of issues, from reproductive rights to worker protections to environmental legislation. It was a common refrain that Virginia Democrats wanted to see Virginia Republicans, quote, go up on the board. We would bring things to a recorded vote on the floor, and we would bring things to recorded votes in committees so that we could make the other side actually put their name on their opposition. No more weaseling around it. In fact, the biggest single instance of this being used in Virginia was ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, in 2019, there were a number of House Republicans who were saying that they wanted to ratify the ERA. They wrote op-eds in favor of
Apologies, everyone. We're going to get that fixed real quick.
Yancey and Tim Hugo are no longer in the House of Delegates. Lawyers shouldn't be able to fire you when you get hurt at work. They voted against. We put them up on the board.
Should I go further back? Okay.
Actually put their name on their opposition. No more weaseling around it. In fact, the biggest single instance of this being used in Virginia was ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, in 2019, there were a number of House Republicans who were saying that they wanted to ratify the ERA. They wrote op-eds in favor of ratifying the ERA. But when we had a vote to change the rules to allow us to ratify the ERA, all of a sudden, they got a little more gun shy on it. They voted against. We put them up on the board. We made sure that their constituents knew, despite what they said, that they were actually the ones standing in the way. It's a tactic that I've used personally. We had some very powerful Republicans that were in very vulnerable seats in 2019 that were on the Commerce and Labor Committee. And I put in legislation to say that your employer shouldn't be able to fire you when you get hurt at work. And Dave Yancey and Tim Hugo voted against that legislation. They voted in favor of letting your employer fire you because you fell off a ladder. And now Dave Yancey and Tim Hugo are no longer in the House of Delegates. That's the power of forcing the vote. It cuts all the crap. It says you can't waffle anymore. You can't say one thing out one side of your mouth and the other out the other. You can't have different messages for your donors and the public. You have to actually put your name on your real position. It gives politicians a simple choice. On this issue, do you press the green button or do you press the red button? And Democrats do it to Republicans all the time. But now is the time that we start using it for Democrats that are standing in the way. You see, an overwhelming majority of Democratic voters in this country support Medicare for All. An overwhelming majority of voters in this country, period, support Medicare for All, especially during a pandemic. We've seen 14 million people lose their health insurance at precisely the time when we need our healthcare system to benefit the most people. And yet, we cannot get it to a vote. So that allows Democrats in Congress to weasel their way around it, to tell insurance industry donors that they don't support it while telling the public that they do. Or they find weasel words like, I support Medicare for all who want it. Or, of course, healthcare should be a human right. That's why we need to build on this pre-existing policy that doesn't guarantee healthcare as a human right. It cuts all of the crap. It cuts through all of the messaging. It puts it to a recorded vote. Forcing the vote says you have to choose right now, yes or no. You support it or you don't. So that's why I'm urging all of our congressional representatives to do everything in their power to force a vote on Medicare for All. And for my part, during Virginia's upcoming legislative session, I intend to force the vote on things like repealing right to work and getting rid of the death penalty. Because the time is over for politicians to waffle and try to ride the fence. This is precisely the moment where we need to know, we, the people, need to know from our legislative leaders at the state level and at the federal level, do you stand with us or do you stand with the big money special interests? So I'm imploring you, all of you, get in contact with your congressman or congresswoman and let them know that you support forcing a vote on Medicare for All so that we can finally find out where all of their colleagues stand. We can find out who's standing in the way and we can organize to replace them with people who won't be an obstruction to progress anymore. So again, I'm Lee Carter. Thank you all for supporting Force the Vote, and please get in touch with your congressman and have them support forcing the vote too. Thank you so much.
All right. Again, really, really glad to have Lee Carter on board and have his extremely powerful words about how effective leveraging your vote in exchange for actual policy concessions can be and has been. And he's exhibited that countless times in Virginia, and it's time that our members of Congress do it in the House as well. So again, thank you to Lee Carter for sharing that video with us. And next we have Jackson Hinkle, who actually organized the rally that we held earlier today in DC and is organizing the rally for the next 2 days as well. Jackson Hinkle has been working hard on organizing these protests throughout the week, and really just got the ball rolling on this Force the Vote movement along with so many others. So extremely grateful for everything Jackson has done so far. Jackson is the host of The Dive with Jackson Hinkle, and the show's description says it all. Propaganda made by and for the proletariat. Welcome, Jackson. Thank you for coming here today.
Thanks for having me. How does my audio sound? Good? Cool.
You're good.
Awesome. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Force the Vote, obviously, and about our actions this week. Really, I first want to say Lee Carter is a badass. He's a real one. I mean, that was incredible. And I look forward to seeing him have a great success in his campaign. So glad to see leaders like that stepping up. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be, a prominent voice on the left who's standing up to make this change happen, right? I think that rings true now more than ever before, because what we're seeing across this country are countless individuals like yourselves who are tuning into the stream right now, airing your grievances. You've seen these progressive members of Congress run for office on a promise that says that we can't wait 100 more years for healthcare or for any of the progressive policies that they campaigned on, and that we need to act now. And it's in AOC's own campaign video from 2018. Those were her own words, right? And now they are failing to meet those promises that they made in that campaign video. And same could be said about every other member of Congress who has signed on to the Medicare for All legislation that in the House. There's not a single one who has come out thus far out of the 100 plus that are saying that they're going to try and aggressively fight for Medicare for All by forcing the vote, and withholding their vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. So the more ordinary people that come out and voice their opinions and voice their opposition to the lack of action from the squad and from the progressives, the better our cause is obviously going to be. because we're the ones who make up their grassroots base. We're the ones who made calls for them back in their campaign. We're the ones who donate to them. We're the ones who give those $27 donations, right? If Bernie Sanders were elected president, I would hope that everyone would hold him accountable as well, if he failed to push for the things that he campaigned on. This is how politics works. And unfortunately, in this country, we idolize politicians. So many of us do. We think that AOC can do no wrong, or Ilhan can do no wrong, or what, maybe Jamal Bowman can do no wrong. We have yet to see, but I am hopeful that there is change. We saw Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush go out on CNN a few nights ago and talk about the fact that they do potentially support a strategy that would look like withholding their support for Nancy Pelosi as speaker to get something in return. The question is whether or not anyone's going to be brave enough to join them. They're incoming freshmen. If it's just the two of them, it's unlikely that they're going to go out on a limb and fight for this, if they know it's destined to fail from the beginning. So I thought that was a really, really telling moment for the two of them, that they were willing to go out on national media and challenge this notion that Nancy Pelosi should become speaker, right? And it's also crazy because back in 2018, we had Barbara Lee, who was looking to challenge Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. And since 2018, we've expanded this progressive caucus in the House by a lot. And we even have more squad members that are going to be coming into Congress in this upcoming session. But somehow, even though we've expanded our base of progressives, we've somehow been acting less powerful, or they've been acting less powerful. They act like they can't do anything now. They act like they can't even run someone against Pelosi. It's ridiculous. She is going to likely get the seat uncontested. It's insane. So that's why, I felt like we had to do something. We had to get out in the streets. We couldn't just let this moment fade off into Twitter oblivion and let it become just another hashtag. Force the vote is a great hashtag, but it's better when you see people in the streets and you see people out in front of the Capitol building and out in front of AOC's office and Nancy Pelosi's office and all of these House and Senate office buildings, right? So that's what we did today. This morning, we met at 9 a.m. at Spirit of Justice Park, which is right behind all of the House office buildings. We led a march around the buildings and gathered in front of them and had an incredible series of speakers, many of whom are, I believe, going to be on this stream tonight. Briahna Joy Gray, Lee Camp, Nick Briahna. It was an incredible group. Savage Joy Marie, who shared her very, very touching and moving personal healthcare story as she has been, wading through this healthcare crisis that we have in this country. So I'm inspired, and I think the majority of Americans are in agreement right now. We've all seen the polls. 72% of Americans support Medicare for All. Okay, unfortunately, Congress doesn't represent that general consensus on this issue, nor does it on any of the other progressive causes that the overwhelming majority of Americans support. So, what I hope that people take away from this call is that anyone can make a change. I don't have a huge audience. I don't have a huge following or anything like that, but a lot of people resonated with this call to action in DC. And even if they couldn't make it out here, it is in the middle of a pandemic. People are starving. They don't have money to make rent. How are people going to travel to DC? I understand. But for those people who couldn't even travel out here, there's been so much support online, which means the world. But if you really don't need a massive following to make a difference, there are guaranteed people within your own community who would love to go out to a protest at your own representative's office to try and force them to support Medicare for All, or maybe if they already do support Medicare for All, to actually fight for it. So if you put out the call, I guarantee you people will meet you there and will join you and will be willing to protest with you, because again, so many people support this because so many people sadly are struggling. So hopefully, some of you are interested in doing that. If you are, and you're looking for help, I know there's a bunch of talented people on here who would be willing to help you, myself included. You can reach out to any of us. And the only way we're going to make a difference is if we fight. We're not getting Medicare for All served to us on a silver platter. We have to take it from them. And if you know the history of how Medicare for All was won in other countries, like Canada, for example, it wasn't given to them either. They first had to fight for it in Saskatchewan. And then other Western provinces realized that, hey, gee, this whole universal healthcare thing seems like a great idea. Why don't we do it in our provinces? And then slowly but surely, they reached enough power, enough collective power to where they formed the NDP. And then they had it nationwide after that. But it was a constant struggle, and it's going to be the same here, but much more of an uphill battle by virtue of the fact that we have all the major healthcare industries in the world right here. And they're going to be fighting tooth and nail, using every last dime in those corporate bank accounts to fight against us. So be prepared for the fight, but don't let it discourage you, because we need this. There's 68,000 people who die every year due to a lack of access to basic health insurance in this country, 500,000 Americans who file for medical bankruptcies every year, and 105 million Americans who are currently uninsured or underinsured in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you everyone for being on this call and for, being willing to, be a part of this movement to force the vote on Medicare for All.
Thank you so much, Jackson. And thank you for bringing up the Canada situation as well. I think that's a really good context for what's going on here. And thank you so much for organizing the on the ground events in this, pandemic digital age. Thank you so much, everybody that's been a part of that. I think that sets a really good precedent and a really good example of everyone going forward for what we can do in our own regions, and really hope that we can get, take that example and go forward using what has been started by all of you. We have another great guest. Our next guest is a writer, a stand-up comedian, and activist. He is the host of Redacted Tonight with Lee Camp on RT America, a podcast called Moment of Clarity, and recently published Bullet Points and Punchlines, the most important commentary ever written on the epic American tragicomedy. Thank you so much for joining us, Lee Camp.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys. I appreciate you putting this together. I already think that this virtual event has been beneficial because Jackson's comforter is incredible, and I'm hoping to pick that up somewhere if he can let me know where he got that. Good to see Lee Carter on here. That is the appropriate number of Lees from Virginia you should have on any Zoom call, at least 2. So it's good to see the Lees of Virginia being represented here. I'm glad to be a part of this because quite frankly, and I think anybody watching, or most of the people watching this already know this, but it's insane. It's utterly bananas that America, the so-called richest country in the world, doesn't give our citizens health care. We've become so used to it that we act like it's something something rare that we should be given, in some amazing moment. But no, it should just be common sense. It is common sense. And the arguments against it, one of them is obviously now is not the time. They love to say that. Now is not the time. It's the middle of a pandemic. There is no better time to say everyone deserves health care. They say, like others have mentioned, 90%, nearly 90% of Democrats support Medicare for All. And yet they say now is not the time. 90% is insane. Like, you couldn't get 90% of a group to agree on like free ice cream. Like, that is an incredible number. Almost 70% of Americans in general support Medicare for All. And, the other 30% could use the medical care because they're eating lead paint chips. And I did that math myself, so I think everyone should be impressed. You have 14 million people have lost their employer-based healthcare just since the pandemic started. Like, does that show you how stupid this system is? We're told people like this system because of choice. Yeah, the choice to get thrown off your healthcare just because you lost your job in the middle of a pandemic. That's the choice. It's insane. And yet they say now is not the time. And by the way, that 14 million number, that was several weeks ago. So, it's tough to keep up on I'm sure it's higher now. It's really tough to keep up on the number of millions who have lost their healthcare in this pandemic, just in this pandemic. 1 out of every 3, the latest numbers are 1 out of every 3 American adults say that in the past couple of weeks, they've had trouble paying their bills or paying for food. 1 out of every 3. That's 70 million American adults can't pay for, have trouble paying for food. How do you think they're going to pay for the healthcare, for our insane healthcare prices? That the same procedures in America cost exponentially more than they cost in other countries. And yet we're told now is not the time. When is this magical time when it's going to be the time, when it's okay to demand healthcare for our citizens? When is that time going to come? As many have mentioned, the U.S. is the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't give their citizens healthcare. And you say that, and it sounds impressive, but it kind of washes over you. It's tough to really appreciate what that means. And so I was looking at the list, that means places like Algeria and Botswana provide their citizens with health care, but they can't do it here in America. Egypt, Ghana, Morocco, and Seychelles give their citizens health care, but the richest country in the world can't do it. Tunisia, the Bahamas, Canada, Costa Rica, Mexico, Cuba, all give their citizens health care, but America just can't manage it. It's just not the time. We just don't have the money. Trinidad and Tobago give their citizens health care. Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Bhutan, China, Georgia, India, they all give their citizens health care, but not here in the United States. That would just be insane to give everybody health care here in the United States. Indonesia, Israel, which we're probably paying for, they give their citizens health care. Japan, Maldives, Philippines, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Thailand, Albania, Austria, Belgium, Croatia, the Czech Republic, all give their citizens health care. And we can't manage it. We just can't figure it out. It's just a tough time. Now is not the right time. Think about the number of countries that can manage it. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn over the page. Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, the Isle of Man. I realize that's not PC. I think it's the Isle of People now. Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Romania, Russia, even dastardly evil Russia gives their citizens health care. And yet we can't do it in the United States of freaking America. Serbia, Spain, Sweden, Turkey, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Macau, even freaking Macau, can manage this, can give their citizens health care, can look after their citizens in a time of crisis. And we can't do it here in the United States. This is the reason the time is now is because it's always been now. It's been decades since it was the right time to give citizens health care. It's just disgusting. It's repulsive. It's a crime against humanity. I mean, think about if some sort of invading force came in to the United States and was killing Americans, was breaking people's legs, destroying their lives, bankrupting them, giving them all kinds of crazy diseases and infections. Well, and making them live with that, making them suffer. What would we do? How would we respond? Well, that's our healthcare system. It's not an invading force. It's our healthcare system. Would we sit back and say, well, let's get someone on a committee first to analyze the problem and figure it out? Or would we do something immediately to deal with that invading force? And just the last point I'll make here is this. The idea that we don't have the money, which is why Joe Biden says he'll veto it, right? Because how would we pay for it? Where would the money come from? This is a country that spends, when you include the black budget, and spends roughly $1 trillion on military a year, $1 trillion on death and destruction. But we can't spend the money for health and life. We have $21 trillion unaccounted for adjustments, financial adjustments in the Pentagon's budget. $21 trillion, and we don't have the money for healthcare. It's laughable. We give billions to countries so that they can buy weapons and other aid we give to dictators. 70% of the dictators in this world we give aid to the tune of trillions of dollars, but we don't have money for our own citizens' health and well-being. Billions to oil companies and subsidies to keep polluting and destroying our planet. Billions to the factory farms, one of the largest polluting forces in this world, one of the largest causes of climate change. We give them billions in subsidies, and we throw out 40% of all food in this country. We give them billions in subsidies, but we can't subsidize taking care of our own citizens. We allow criminal billionaires on Wall Street to hide trillions of dollars in tax havens, corporations to pay zero in taxes via various loopholes. We allow that to go on, but we don't have the money to take care of our citizens. Yeah, well, there's the money. I just told you where you can get it. I told you where it is. It's sitting there. And it's the idea that we don't have the money, the idea that the president could veto this because he doesn't see where we get the money is fucking laughable. And it's disgusting. And it's a crime against humanity. It's a crime against every one of us. And it's a crime against so many who are suffering in this country. So don't believe any of these garbage arguments for why we can't and won't do this. It just comes down to profit over people. That is all it comes down to. It comes down to the fact that our Congress, our government has been captured by corporate interests. And that is the only reason. Any of the other reasons for why we can't do this are just garbage thrown into your face so you can't see the truth. Thank you, and thanks to everyone for putting this together.
Awesome stuff, Lee. Thank you again so much for joining and for your righteous anger, which I think we all share, and raising such a key point because they always talk about the cost of healthcare and Medicare for All. And I always see the study cited where they say Medicare for All will cost us $32 trillion over a 10-year period, which is a very scary number when you don't follow that up with the next sentence in the study. This is a George Mason University study funded by the Koch brothers, so definitely no fans of Medicare for All. And the next sentence in that study is that our current healthcare system costs $34 trillion over the next 10 years. So Medicare for All actually saves $2 trillion over 10 years. So if you ever get in one of these arguments with your conservative friends about how expensive this is, just please look into that study. I think it lays it out very clearly. So next on the panel, really excited to introduce this next guest. Had the pleasure of meeting her in person today and having worked with her over the past week or so in setting up the Force the Vote Slack, which honestly, mostly thanks to her, all of this got off the ground. And we are so grateful for her leadership and advocacy and really making a lot of this just come to fruition. So we have Briahna Joy Gray, who is a former lawyer, former senior politics editor at The Intercept, former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders, and a contributing editor at Current Affairs. She is currently the co-host of my favorite podcast, Bad Faith, and the reason why we're all here today. So again, Briahna Joy Gray, thank you again.
Thank you. I'm really humbled by the efforts that you have all put in and have been putting in for a lot longer than the time that I have been engaged, in politics, even casually, much less professionally. So I mean it when I say that I'm really humbled by what everyone's managed to do and how willing people have been to put their time and bodies on the line and come out and represent for this particular issue. I said this earlier today, but I left my job at a law firm partly because I hated it, but partly because it didn't feel sustainable when there were so many other things that I cared so much more about. And I think, like a lot of people, Bernie Sanders' 2016 race made me feel like my ideals, my values were okay to say out loud. That it didn't make me like a kooky, crazy, crunchy granola lady in Birkenstock somewhere out in Oregon. to say and really mean that I thought that healthcare was a human right, or that climate change is an existential crisis and that we should treat it as such. And even if that meant radical changes to the way that we live our lives. And that sort of thing, once you start saying it out loud, is pretty hard to put back in the bottle. Although plenty of people have tried and a lot of money has been spent trying to get people to forget that we cared about things. And, you know, when Bernie ran in 2016, it felt a little like we all were revealed to each other. It was a mask off moment in the best way where we discovered we had a real community. And that energy fomented over the next 4 years and obviously came alive in its concretest form in 2020 in a campaign that I think we all had a lot of hope for and are now reeling from the loss of. And so there's a lot of conversation right now about how fractured the left is. But I think the reality is it's just the natural growing pains of figuring out who we're going to be and how we're going to operate in a world where we don't have the kind of statesman in Bernie. We don't have that kind of central leadership figure anymore. I hope that doesn't mean that the relationships that we've formed under Bernie are going to fall apart entirely. I still respect a lot of my friends and colleagues over at the Young Turks and a number of other organizations that have fallen on the other side of this issue. But I do want to take this moment to say that I don't see any of the people who disagree about this issue as my enemies, and to just explain a little bit of why I think this is such a good idea outside of the some of the particulars of the facts and figures that I think have been laid out before already. And so for me, when I look at my theory of change and the theory of change that I think a lot of us on the left embraced in the context of the Bernie campaign, it understood that money and politics was at the root of a lot of the dysfunction in our society. And what Bernie proved is that a lot of these issues are enormously popular. Climate change is enormously popular. Medicare for All obviously is enormously popular. A wealth tax is enormously popular and on a bipartisan basis, right? These are things that majorities of Republicans support as well as Democrats. So then you confront this question of why is it if in a democratic society, most people support these policies, those policies aren't reflected in our elected leadership. And that's where you get to this issue of money and power. So the question with Nancy Pelosi becomes, how do you uproot a system? How do you change the mind? How do you change, more importantly, the behavior of someone like that, who's the most powerful Democrat in the House? Do you do it by kind of being polite and playing nice and working out deals in the background? I have no doubt that there are some small concessions that Nancy Pelosi is willing to turn over to the progressive members of Congress so that they keep quiet enough that she can keep rolling with the big dog and doing what she does every day of her life as the most powerful fundraiser in Washington. But if we really mean what we say about the need for radical change, if we say 68,000 people die every year from a lack of health care, and we don't treat that as a statistic, but as someone's father and sister and brother and wife and daughter, then it becomes enraging in a way that I think is really relatable to have people say, well, let's just give it time. Let's just work on this behind the scenes. Let's give these figures the benefit of the doubt. Because when you see video of Nancy Pelosi 30 years ago talking about how we're going to get Medicare for all, and you think about how many people died in each one of those intervening 30 years, it is irresponsible not to be furious, enraged, and heartbroken at the lack of traction that we've gotten so far. So there are some people who are now saying we need to have a different strategy. We need to have a more confrontational approach. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We're at a moment that because of the hard work, the organizing efforts by people like Justice Democrats and the DSA, we do have a significant number of progressives now in Congress. And for the first time, they have a significant amount of power in this moment. No, they don't have enough votes to push our left policy agenda through the House. But what they do have enough votes to do is to say we can deny the most powerful Democrat in the House what she wants, the speakership, in exchange for a number of concessions, and or we can vote her out entirely. And whoever the new speaker is will know that we have the power and authority to start to set the agenda, or we won't cast our votes for a new speaker unless they make some concessions that Nancy Pelosi wasn't willing to do. I think that there's a lot more agreement around that issue than the controversy online would suggest. And I think all the suggestions about additional asks we should be making are absolutely legitimate. I think David Sirota, my former colleague, has made a number of really smart suggestions. You know, everyone right now today is celebrating some concessions with respect to PAYGO that progressives were able to get. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that one of David Sirota's original suggestions was getting rid of PAYGO entirely, not just getting these waivers for discrete, for COVID-related and climate-related activities, right? We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that PAYGO is only a thing because of Nancy Pelosi, right? So we're not saying that this should be a conversation about the best strategy to use the leverage we have in this moment. But what becomes frustrating is when we're having a conversation about whether or not to use that leverage at all. And hopefully, if anything comes out of it, it is an agreement among the left that we need to have if we allow that there is an inside strategy, there has to be an outside strategy as well. And the most radical groups among us, if the DSA is the far left, if you know whatever they want to call us on MSNBC, then our most radical leftist organizations can't be putting all of their eggs in the basket of an inside strategy that basically relies on the benevolence of Nancy Pelosi in any given moment to help us advance a cause that has never been more grave. 15 million people have lost their employer-based health care in the middle of a global pandemic, which is not going away at anytime soon. At the rate that we're vaccinating people, I read recently that it would be 10 years. Now, obviously, hopefully, inshallah, they're going to pick up the pace, but it would be 10 years before we actually get to a place where we can return to normalcy again. So we're at the beginning of this crisis, and it has never been a more opportune moment to push what Americans already know, that healthcare is a human right, and we have a uniquely cruel and inhumane system. And the people who say, well, we just got to get more progressives elected, absolutely we have to get more progressives elected. But what we should be doing in this moment is creating an environment that makes their election more likely. Because by the time they run in 2 years, it should be politically toxic not to support Medicare for all, not just for progressives, but for every single Democrat. 88% of Democrats support Medicare for all. And yet nearly half of Democrats in the House feel comfortable opposing this policy. That accountability gap needs to be closed, and it's not going to be closed by a corporate media which is complicit. And it's not going to be closed by elected representatives if they are unwilling to point fingers and name names. Nancy Pelosi is responsible for that gap. And all of the elected Democrats, as well as Republicans who take inordinate amounts of money from the healthcare industry, are also responsible. I personally think that there's an enormous amount of value in having a floor vote, because we should demand a full day or more of hearings in which that differ meaningfully from the hearings that we had in 2019, insofar as they highlight the extent to which people opposed to this policy are beneficiaries of the industry that this policy would kill. That is something that's not come up in the 2019 hearings, I think in part because Congress members are squeamish about calling each other out in that way when they're in the same party. That has got to stop. And I think that part of, if there's any kind of litmus test here that I think is legitimate about whether or not the squad is going to do this, I think we really need progressives to be willing to call out not just Republicans. That's easy. We live in a world where saying Republicans are bad is easy. What we need them to be able to say and to do is to call out the misleadership within our own party, because we have the House. To the extent that we can't pass Medicare for all in the House, it's not an indictment of Medicare for all as a policy. It's an indictment of our elected representatives who are not reflecting the interests of an overwhelming majority of Democrats and nearly half of Republicans. And not only should they be co-sponsors of Medicare for all, every single Democrat in the House, or shall I say 88% of them at the very least, should be actively advocating for Medicare for all and arguing why it's good for small businesses, why it's good for entrepreneurs, why it's good for our national budget and economy. And they aren't doing that because they don't have to, because the Democrats that do believe those things aren't forcing them to, and our liberal press isn't forcing them to. And now we're seeing that even some of our friends in the lefty press are unwilling to be critical of Democrats in the House if they have been sympathetic to our cause in the past. And this doesn't mean we have to cancel anybody or throw any moneylenders out of the temple or what have you. But what it does mean is that we have to be honest about the motives and incentives that are operating here. It doesn't mean that someone has, been corrupted and they're just evil and they've shirked all of their ideals. But what it does mean is there's such thing as institutional creep. There are institutional pressures that we all understand as leftists who say we understand this theory of power. You join a law firm, you join a NGO, and you have an investment in making that organization work. And it has incentives that differ to varying degrees from the constituencies that it's supposed to serve. And it is not wrong to name that reality. In fact, it is incumbent on us to be clear-eyed and to name that reality and to push the people that we've elected to be true to their roots, just like they asked us to when they were running for office. So I hope that, on the other end of this conversation, on the other end of this fight, we can come together and realize that we really do share all of these goals. I really do think that we understand power that operates in this way. And I hope that we can see past any differences in style and delivery, and appreciate the fact that the vast diversity of approaches that we've seen. Connect with people in our broad, diverse coalition in different and important ways. And we need everyone along that spectrum to varying degrees. And I just want to say that I appreciate all of you and all of the ways that you've been fighting and all of your diversity. And I look forward to continuing this fight long after this speakership vote is said and done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Briahna. Thank you for putting for being such a powerful voice, not only for Medicare for All, but for so much more. Bad Faith is also my favorite podcast, and also thank you for bringing so much good faith to the argument. And I think, thank you for the grace that you give in every conversation that you have, that I see, where you can hear people coming from different places, and you could say, wait a minute, this is a human being who also wants Medicare for All, who understands just how desperate it is, how much we need it yesterday, and to say, where is this person coming from? And I think you're doing really amazing, in my opinion, to bring people together. And I think that kind of good faith sets an amazing example for this movement and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you're all doing as well. Thank you, really. It would be nothing without every single person here.
I appreciate that. Thanks for being here. Our final guest today has been also just a powerful voice on the necessity for Medicare for All. And I want to take this opportunity to thank her for sharing her story with such courage and such vulnerability. I've heard her speak, and I know I speak for so many, because I've talked to so many people about it, when I say that her voice is essential in this movement. And, it was her voice is very moving to me, just incredibly moving, and just floors me. Please welcome Marie Mann, aka Savage Joy Marie on Twitter, the host of the Unruly Hour on with Savage Joy. Looks like we may have a little technical difficulty, so we'll just do some riffing in the meantime. No, this has been an amazing call. It has meant so much. So many people in so many different ways have contributed to make everything happen so quickly. What this call means to a lot of us who have been working on this is being able to just engage with and touch more people, and to let people know that we have the express purpose of getting your input, getting your opinions, and hearing your voice in continuing this movement for Medicare for All. And we really could, not only could we really use it, but we need your voice going forward. And so I invite people to give their incredibly invaluable time to join our Slack workspace. We have a website that's forcethevote.card with 2 R's.co. That's forcethevote.carrd.co, and we'll put that in the chat. So anyone can join. Again, click that link and find pretty much every resource. We have everything there. And I think for now, let's go ahead and go to our Q&A portion of this. So I invite anyone that has spoken. I know some people had some other engagements, but if anybody that is on the call that has spoken, please feel free to stick around for the Q&A, and we'll start taking some questions for those to be directed to those people. And if anybody has any questions about the work that's been going on this past week, a little bit over a week now on Slack, and then you can direct any questions to anybody that is here from that, whether that be David, Ryan, or I. So we'll open the floor for questions. I already saw that there is a question from Linda. When is the vote for the speakership? I'll go ahead and answer that myself quickly. I believe that the 117th Congress convenes tomorrow, the new Congress. They get sworn in, and they have, the precedent is for them to vote on the first day for the speakership every time on the first day. Seems to be that's what they do. So all signs point to that being happening tomorrow. I've also heard a good argument that it makes a lot of sense for in Pelosi's, for her, like, strategically to do that with the Senate runoff elections in Georgia coming on the 5th. So does anybody have any questions? You can put them in the chat. We have a question from David. How can people living in districts where their representatives are neolibs or Republicans help?
I'll take this one if I can, Alex. I think even if you're in a district where your representative is not on board with Medicare for All, I think one, it still helps to let them know that this issue is gaining steam, and to reach out to them just to talk about it. But two, I also think it doesn't hurt to reach out to progressive reps, even if you're not in their district, because I think the really unique thing about our politicians today, especially the progressive ones that are in the House, is that they were brought in by the support of people not just from their district, from all over the country. And AOC is a perfect example of who had widespread support through social media, and got tons of donations from people all over the country who loved what she represented, as well as every other member of the squad, and which is growing to this day. So I think we are all, in a sense, their constituents, because we all helped bring them into power, and we all supported them, and we all a lot of us phone banked for them and spread awareness on social media. So even if you're not in their district, it still is impactful to write to them if you want to send them an email or call their office and just talk about why you think they should force the vote. Talk about, give your healthcare story. We're trending on Twitter, my M4A story. So hashtag my M4A story. It's been trending for a few days on Twitter, and it's gotten a lot of support. And we really just need to highlight the voices of those who are struggling right now, because I think what's being lost in this conversation, which can seem like a lot of leftist infighting and attacks on different personalities, is that what's at the core of this issue is that there are people who are struggling every single day because they don't have health care. And those people should be centered in this discussion, and those people should not be forgotten, because every day that we go without giving them healthcare is another day that they struggle, they can't afford a different bill, they can't pay for insulin payments or chemotherapy or a million other things. So that's why we need to really highlight those voices and focus on that through this Force the Vote movement, because those are the people that we're fighting for. So I would just say, make that be known if you or somebody in your family or somebody you know has struggled from not having healthcare, especially if for all the 15 million people who lost their healthcare in the middle of this pandemic, please let your voices be heard, because people are listening. And this moment has really taken off, and there is tons of eyes on it. And instead of focusing on the infighting, which I think a lot of Twitter tends to do, I think a much better way we can focus on this is just really highlight those voices of vulnerable. So if you can let that be known to all the progressive members of the House, I think that would really make a difference.
That's great, David. Thank you. And that's a great question. I hope that answers your question. We have another one. If we are successful and the vote for Medicare for All happens, but it fails, what would the next step be? Which is a fantastic question. I think it's a question in a lot of people's minds. I'll do a quick answer. And I think I speak for everyone that's been volunteering their time in this movement over the past week, that we want to hear everyone's voice about going forward, about what the next step should be for Medicare for All. I think that one of the things that's drawn Force the Vote to be so powerful is kind of its ability to, and I think we've said over the past weeks, that it kind of exposes so much, so many people saying healthcare is a human right, but not supporting Medicare for All. And the next step would be to, quite simply, if anything, to expose more and more and expose the next sort of dichotomy between truth and falsehood, and to, for instance, things that are we've been talking about are also exposing things that can happen, like forcing the vote. Another big thing would be Joe Biden having an executive order that would be expanding Medicaid to the age of 0. So more things that help us, basically foam the runway, as it's been said, to get to Medicare for All. And I welcome anybody else who, David or Ryan, who have any answers on that.
Yeah, I would just add the Force the Vote movement. It's not just about the House vote. I think that's the first step. But and if you see in the Slack, we have a really comprehensive long-term strategy of how to keep the pressure on and expand this to healthcare advocacy in general. And as Briahna Joy Gray mentioned earlier, David Sirota wrote a great piece about how this Force the Vote effort can be used as a springboard for so many different aspects of addressing the inadequacies in our healthcare system. So for those of you who may know, we have Richie Neal leading the Ways and Means Committee, who is a staunch opponent of Medicare for All and is essentially getting in the way of that ever passing. So part of this push is to attach removing Richie Neal from the Ways and Means Committee. That's one aspect. But there's so many other legislation changes that we can push for on top of forcing the floor vote. Ro Khanna is pushing for his bill, the state-based single payer plan, which will allow states to introduce their own single payer plan. Currently, they're unable to due to some issues within the federal government where you can't have a Medicaid waiver or Medicare waiver. You have to, it's pretty complicated, but you have to provide, you're not able to provide an alternative to the current Medicare system. You have to allocate funds towards that. This would allow you to reallocate those funds towards a state single payer system. So that's one example. And we have the New York Health Act, which is a great example of a plan that would create a progressive payroll tax that would not need any more money from the federal government to provide single payer within New York. And there's a lot of states that can do something similar. I think California is another one that's looking to create something like this. So beyond the floor vote, there is so much more that we can do. And I think the floor vote is the perfect vehicle to push for all of these things. We can demand this from Nancy Pelosi. We want a floor vote for Medicare for All, and we want HCEG Act, which is Pramila Jayapal's bill, which is the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act, to give Medicare for all for the duration of the pandemic. If we can't get Medicare for all, at least give it to us while people are struggling in a pandemic. Or can we get Ro Khanna's state-based single payer plan? All of these things we should be pushing for all at once, because if we ask for crumbs, they'll give us even less than crumbs. So we ask for the loaf and then some, and then we get something out of it. And that's what this is all about. So again, this does not end with the floor vote. This is only the beginning. And we have, I think, 1,200 people in the Slack now. All of you, please join the Slack. There is so much happening and so much organization happening, and just really excited to see what comes of this.
As David said, there are so many different strategies that need to have and tactics that need to happen all at once. And to try to summarize some questions in the chat, some quick background about what we'll be doing this week. One of the tactics we've been doing is getting together virtually and calling representatives and tweeting at them, Instagram, Facebook, and emailing them and asking them to force the vote as a baseline, as a very at the very minimum, as well as these other demands that David listed. And going forward, we can use this as a way. We'll invite you all to enter the Slack, because we want it. We already are planning on having some meetings that we have like listening meetings. We need all the information. I see a lot of people have some great ideas, like ballot initiatives, and we want to be able to discuss this in these meetings that are going to be conducted by regional leaders. These, once again, all volunteers, and we want to try to get as much information that we can, and we need all the voices in the room for this people's movement. And something that you can do to get involved, not only in terms of the Slack, but is to get involved with anything like DSA, or and I know a lot of you already have really great ideas, and I see in the chat. So, and I saw one question specifically about college students. Does anyone have David, do you have any suggestions for what a college student could do on campus?
Yeah, well, first find if you have a YDSA chapter on your campus. A lot of YDSA chapters are already organizing around Medicare for All in so many different ways. And if there's not one, maybe you could start one, or maybe you could start your own independent organization that's fighting for Medicare for All. You can do it through our Slack. Maybe we should have a university channel. The cool thing about this Slack is it's really in its infancy, and there's so much we can do with it. Even have form an organization ourselves within that. So, join with your local DSA or Rose Caucus or any leftist organization that's organizing in your area. Or if there isn't one, we have an infrastructure that we're starting to form that you can be a part of as well. And those are not mutually exclusive. I think there are so many progressive leftist groups that are pushing for Medicare for All in different ways. And we can work together in a coalition to push for this. So if there is not already a group in your university, start one, and we can help you do it.
I want to say one last thing, because it looks like Joy Marie is back, and I'm very happy to be able to have time to have her speak. And the last thing that I just want to say to David's point is that basically what we want to do is, at the very least, do what we're doing now, and scale it upwards and do more of this, and have a broad, social awareness and pressure campaigns across the country that we need all to happen at the same time. And it is in its infancy, but we believe that we already know that most people, the vast majority of people want Medicare for all, and all we have to do all we have to do sounds way too simple, but what we have to do is get everyone to understand and invite our friends and our family, because we know what's important to them, to join us in our fight to take on the powers that be, the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry that fight us at every turn and at every corner. Just the other day, I was looking up Force the Vote on Twitter, and there was a healthcare advertisement on the page, and so we have to be online and we have to be offline, and there's going to be a lot of things that happen at once. And the goal is to listen to the most people, get everybody involved, have people take actions in their regions, and form hubs and say, we want Medicare for all, and we're going to do everything we can to do it. And what that's going to look like is going to be up to you. And it seems like we've had so many amazing voices so far, so many great ideas, so many great minds so far, and this is only the beginning. And at that, I did introduce you, Joy, earlier, but I don't know if you heard me, so I'll say it again. Joy has been a powerful voice on the necessity of Medicare for all. And I just want to thank you personally for sharing your story with such courage and vulnerability. I've heard you speak, and I know that I speak for so many people because I've spoken to them, and your voice is essential. We agree, your voice is essential in this movement, and that we were floored the other night on the town hall. And you quickly have become one of my favorite Twitter followers, and I can't believe it took me so long to be on Twitter to follow you. And so please welcome Joy Marie Mann, aka Savage Joy Marie, the host of the Unruly Hour with Savage Joy.
Oh, you're still muted, Joy.
That's okay, because I just sneezed a few times, so good timing. Thank you guys so much for having me. These past 3 days have just been, I can't even tell you, I've been an activist for years, and these past 3 days or whatever have been life-changing, absolutely life-changing. I mean, I didn't even think I was going to speak on the town hall until Ryan Knight's like, guess what? You're taking my spot. And it was just like, I don't know. I shared things I'd never shared before. And it was very overwhelming. And, the outpouring of kindness has been something I haven't seen since our campaign. Burgers we've always been so loving with each other, and we had that camaraderie, and the campaign ended, and kind of so did we in a lot of ways. And that divide is seeming quite prevalent right now. So I just want to, stress to everyone that we have to think about the issue. It's Medicare for all. You're going to have different strategies of how to get to it. Cool, let's talk. But bashing people, the pictures going around of, there were like 50 of us there today. It's literally the middle of a pandemic. That doesn't say anything. Our live stream town hall had 130,000 views. That wasn't everyone who would have been there, but it's being made out to be like, see, people don't support this. Actually, yeah, they really do. So I think we have to just focus that there are so many people who support what we're doing. There are so many people who need what we're doing. And as you said earlier, this really will set the precedent. If they will not stand up for us, we cannot count on them to do it again. We can't. It's that simple. And I'm talking as someone who has met Rashida, interviewed Rakana 4 times, interviewed AOC. I've met these people. I've talked to them. They've told me how passionate they are about Medicare for All. And I'm like, where are those activists now? Where are they? We elected activists. We could have elected politicians. That's not rare. They're a dime a dozen. We wanted us elected. That was the whole point. I did see, I just posted it on Twitter about a half an hour ago. There were forced to vote people in the Bronx at AOC's office. So that gave me hope. I was like, yes, because Bree and I were talking about, is there a way we could get, you know, her local people to go and say, look, we're your constituents, force the fucking vote. So that was cool. But, you know, for people who don't know my story, essentially, last year I went to sleep like normal, and I woke up with most of my eyesight gone. So it's been a long, in less than a year, I've gone to no sight in the left eye and about 12% sight in the right eye. And so my life has obviously changed tremendously, as has my husband's, who's, you know, kind of, you know, in the past year had to like learn so many things, like how to kind of take care of me in some ways. So I become a different person. I was always so independent and self-reliant, and now I have to depend on other people for things, and it's not easy for me to do. It definitely makes you feel like a burden. And during this process of, you know, having to grasp the concept of, you know, not being able to see, and, you know, going to use a debit card and trying to do it like 10 times, and the people behind you are, you know, things like this, the anxieties that come up, to exacerbate those things by, you know, pre-authorizations and, you know, phone calls to, you know, health insurance. And, you know, I mean, I have gone through so much shit trying to get bills paid, and I have insurance, but, you know, my diagnosis is very rare and I'm young, so they don't want to pay it. I had a woman reach out to me from the Netherlands, and she said, I get eye injections over $12,000 a piece, each eye, every 30 days. She said, I'm in the Netherlands, I get the same exact eye injection and it's $0. That is why we fight. That's disgusting. I've worked in healthcare for 10 years before I lost my job due to losing my sight. And I saw that shit all the time. And unfortunately, I think the only people who are so-called against Medicare for All are ones who are just kind of either lacking empathy or, you know, maybe just because they haven't known anyone who needs it. I'm not sure, but I didn't think I'd ever need it. Thankfully, I still supported it, but I didn't know. Everyone is literally one diagnosis away, one car accident away. You know, not to be morbid, but it is reality. Like, this is advantageous for everyone, including monetarily. So, you know, I think what we're doing is incredibly important. I think that saying the word progressive is just not equivalent to doing what you say you were going to do. Labels are just that. I want to see those people who looked at me in my eyes and said, I will fight for these people. I'm not seeing them right now. You know, we all saw the clips of Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. I have hope fingers crossed, please. But like I said, you know, if you guys saw my speech earlier today, they are not doing this alone. Like, how brave do you have to be to stand there with 10 other people? It's not that, you know, grandiose of this like display. Like, you have to be like, oh, you know, I'm so strong, I'm going up by myself. And it's, how scary is that to just stand with your peers and do it? It shouldn't be that difficult. And the thing that I just cannot understand is that this is all against someone who has completely disrespected and belittled them time after time. And they have so much trepidation of like pissing her off when they already hate her ass. What's the difference? She has to choose her loyalty, and will not just AOC, really everyone. And people like myself and the millions of others who are in this situation, you know, we're counting, we need something. Our dude was screwed over twice. You know, Joe Biden doesn't give a shit, that's for sure. So give us something. You know, these people, they're supposed to be our allies. Give us some little taste of hope. And then, you know, I do want to leave it on this. You know, there's so much negativity surrounding, you know, what we're doing, way more positivity, but there is some negativity. And I just want to share something quick that happened today at the rally. So a guy comes up to me, never seen him in my life, comes up to me and says, "I have a book for sale." I said, "Sure." It's $15. He hands me something, I think it's a $20 bill. I put it in my bag, and I'm looking at my bag, and I said, "I'll get you a $5." I pick my head up, and he's already walked way far. And I was like, oh, I guess he just wants me to keep the $5. So I looked at what he handed me, and it was a check for $200. That is what our movement's about, right there. That is the power of sharing our stories. I cannot tell you what that means to me. Like, if you're watching, sir, I love you. It meant so much to me. I mean, I just got an ambulance $748 after insurance, like hours after doing the town hall. So between the stimulus and this gentleman, like, I just feel so much better. So doing an act of kindness like that, it just means the world. So, you know, no matter how, you know, ugly some people get, just remember that, like, we are on the right side of history.
Thank you so much, Joy. You're right. We have righteousness on our side, and to quote one of my favorite things that people that know me, I do way too much, but to quote something from Lord of the Rings, there's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. And once again, thank you for inspiring me and so many others. I want to honor everybody's time. Looks like we only have a couple minutes. I'm going to share what everybody could do or I'm going to share the link for the Force the Vote website, so everybody can find all different kinds of ways that they can get involved and become part of the conversation. I'm going to just say a quick goodbye to everybody and thank everybody for coming here, make everybody know, and please just, you know, to plead with people to please dedicate some time, volunteer some time with us to be part of the conversation. We need all the voices. And that said, I'm doing it a bit theatrical. I just want to say that this is a big tent movement. So if you are in any way amenable to what we're doing now, then you're going to want to be a part of what's coming next, because we are listening to you. This is a people's movement, and exactly that. We don't move without you. Everything we have done so far, including you being on this call, all of you, has been accomplished by an inclusive volunteer effort Everyone that's speaking is volunteering their time. Thank you to everyone that has already gotten involved and given their time, their passion, their expertise, their vulnerability, their grace. That being said, join our Slack workspace, which you can find by visiting forcethevote.carrd.co. That's forcethevote.card with 2 R's.co. And we'll put that in the chat again. And in the upcoming week, we will be having regional and national meetings with the express purpose of asking people where we want to go next. So in the words of Savage Joy and Marie, go forth and force the fucking vote. You can call your representatives tomorrow. You can find a spreadsheet of everyone that you can call, email, text, tweet, everything that you can do will be on that website. You could do it tomorrow morning, you could do it late tonight. So thank you so much for everyone for coming. And I can't wait to hear from all of you. And I can't thank all of you enough for coming tonight because you brought so much light to me. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.